Hello and welcome to Freed Indeed Live. I'm your host, Kevin J. N. Hughes. Today, I want to share a little story as we um, are beginning the journey of Lent. I want to share this story that was shared to me by a great friend of mine named Irina, and it's a story that I find very helpful in helping us to cultivate an orthodox way of thinking. So, in the book of Archimandrite Tikhon, um, the book is called Unholy but Holy. This amazing story is contained. So, the story says that there was a famous Russian monk who visited Egypt in the late 19th century. There, he had spent a night in a very poor village. He spent the night in the house of one very old man who was very poor and had only one little goat. So the old man and the monk talked about God and faith. And at one moment, the old man said, "Well, every morning I pour some goat milk into this bowl and I place the bowl beneath that palm tree over there. And then I pray to God and offer this goat milk to him as I have nothing else to offer him. And during the night, God drinks the goat milk, and every morning I find the empty bowl. This is how I know that God has heard my prayers and granted me mercy." The monk laughed at the story and told the peasant, "God does not drink milk. God does not need drink and does not need food. It is an animal that drinks your milk and not God. You should stop with superstitious nonsense." The peasant was very sad to hear this, and the monk told him, "Okay, tonight set out the milk and let us see what really happens." That night the peasant poured out the goat milk into the bowl and placed the bowl at the palm tree, and the two of them hid behind a rock and observed. During the night a little fox came and drank the milk, and the monk told the peasant, "You see, it is not God that drinks your milk, but a little fox." The peasant was devastated. The monk left and went back to Russia and his lavra. That night the monk wanted to climb upstairs to his room to sleep, but an angel with a burning sword stood at the stairs, preventing him from going up. "What did I do?" the monk asked, terrified. "What did I do to deserve the wrath of God?" The angel told him. Every night God would send a small fox to drink a peasant's milk so that that peasant would know that God accepted his prayers and his offerings. And you discouraged that man, and as a result have shaken his faith. So the reason why I share this story is because sometimes we think that we are very enlightened and we scoff at the traditions that other people believe are important. And when we do that, we leave ourselves open to this very problem. And the reason we leave ourselves open to this problem is because we forget that sometimes God uses means to bring about his will. Now, some traditions, some lowercase t traditions, aren't good, and it's good for us to challenge them. But some things that people do in their families, some things that people do in their lives, some of them seem strange to us. And yet God embraces these things as things that they do. I'm reminded of a book called Bruchko, which is about a evangelical Protestant who became a missionary in Brazil and shared the gospel with people who had never had any experience with people outside of their own tribe, other than hostile experiences with people from other isolated tribes. And he shared the gospel with these people not by trying to destroy their traditional culture, but by showing them how Christ embraced that culture and embraced their lowercase t traditions as part of his tradition so that they could be brought in. And this is the strength of Orthodox missionary activity. When Roman Catholics challenge Orthodox and say that we don't have missionaries, that's very false. But the reason why they say that is because, from a Western perspective, the Western church has a tendency to trivialize the cultures of a particular place. That's why if you go to a Presbyterian church in America or a Presbyterian church in Korea, they're designed the exact same way. Like they look like a building with bare walls, and they don't look like the traditional structures of that place. But Orthodoxy isn't like that. Orthodoxy embraces the culture of a place that it's trying to reach and tries to understand that culture and to love that culture and meet that culture where it is, so that the people of that culture can experience the love and glory of Christ. But we can't do that if we have the mindset that that Russian monk had in the story, because the Russian monk in the story believed that everything he didn't understand was just superstition and needed to be dispelled. And he believed that because he couldn't see that God can work just as well through a fox as through a person. And so let us take this moment to realize that. But I also want to say that this story is a rebuke to the modernist mentality, because the modernist mentality, the mentality that I actually grew up with, I'm very familiar with this mentality. And basically, the way modernism works is, like Neil deGrasse Tyson is, this is basically his whole shtick, is he breaks things down to their sort of least common denominator of what they are, and then says, see, this doesn't mean anything. Um, and Jonathan Peugeot has been critical of this and said, yeah, but we don't experience the world that way. Yes, you can break everything down. You can break human sexuality down to the exchange of bodily fluids and say, see, sex is nothing. It's just the exchange of bodily fluids. But that's not how we experience human sexuality. We experience it as intimacy, as two people becoming one. And frankly, human sexuality is not just the exchange of bodily fluids, it's something magical and mystical when it's in its proper context. And the only reason why we think that it's just the exchange of bodily fluids is because we have made a conscious decision to mock and destroy the meaning behind it. But the reality is that meaning is still present. And we know that meaning is present because the truth is, people who go out and just have sex all the time and don't experience the magic of it, don't experience the grandeur and the glory of it because they're just having as many encounters as they can, they always leave that damaged, troubled, and suffering psychologically, spiritually. They leave that experience in suffering. Why? Because they've separated that which is physical from the meaning behind it. And that's what that Russian monk was guilty of. He stopped seeing the world as something enchanted. He stopped seeing the world as a place where God is living and active, and began seeing the world in the cold, flat, materialistic way that our modern so-called scientists see the world. Our people today want to see the world in this flat, secular, materialistic two-dimensional way, and it's wrong. Because time and again, what we see is that the world is not flat, it is not secular, and it is not materialist. Time and again, what we see is that the world is beautiful and magical, and God is living and active in it. And that's what that story reminds us. So I hope that today, as you go about your day, you'll remember that God is living, active, and present in the world we live in, and that you can experience Him today, whether you experience Him through prayer and fasting in your day to day life, or whether you experience Him through the little blessing of how He uses a little fox in your life. So look in your life today and try to see the little foxes God is sending you to let you know that He is present with you. Thank you very much, and I pray that you have a great Lent. Please share this with your friends so that they too can be freed indeed. God bless.